To start, here we are today. Thank you all for attending a concept that we want to share with you. This is a virtual learning academy. As you've heard by now, we are intending to return to school next fall. I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the options and what are we looking at. I am Daniel Morel, the interim superintendent, and there are several staff members on this screen that will be here to help answer questions a little bit later. Right now, what I'd like to do, our process for today, will be to go through and give you a little overview of what we're thinking. And you'll notice, I hope everybody's seeing my slides, at the bottom where it says working draft and not finalized. That's exactly what this is. We want to share with you our thinking. We want to hear from you as to what questions this may have for you as you think about where you want to place your student for this next school year. So once again, welcome. Let's get started and looking at what we're talking about here. Of course, slide, there we go. So why are we even thinking about a virtual option? You know, we have been on this distance learning path all year long, and from day one since I've been here, we have talked about our goal being to get everybody back in school full-time as we knew it before the pandemic. Well, we're pretty confident we're getting there to get everybody back in school, but there may be some restrictions, such things as wearing a mask and how much distance between us, et cetera, et cetera. We also know that some of our families may believe that and feel that it'd be much more prudent and beneficial to their student if, in fact, they continued on a virtual environment. And so we're exploring that options. And what we're looking at is the option for families to stay in a full-time virtual learning academy for the 21-22 school year. As we move forward, what we want to do, and as I've already shared with you, is we want to share this information, try to answer questions. And I want to be straight up on this, is you may pose a question today that we don't have an answer yet for. But that also your questions will help guide us in terms of our thinking and what we should be considering as we move forward. And the other part of all this is while we talk about a virtual academy, as has been so true this entire year, we keep getting new legislation or new direction from the county health department almost daily. And right now there is some legislation out there, a variety of different bills that may shift whatever we develop today, may end up looking different by the time we're ready to fully implement it in August. So we will try to keep you posted as much as we can and move forward with all of that. So what are we talking about here? First, let's look at the elementary level. And we are calling this a pilot program. You're going to need to forgive me. I think the allergies are kicking in for me. And what we're considering at this point in time is we would have a central location for our elementary students that is the virtual academy. To be a part of it, and again, remember this is still under consideration, you would need to apply for an interdistrict transfer to attend the virtual academy. This would disenroll you from your current school, but enroll you into the virtual academy itself. Our initial thinking is this would be at least a one-year commitment. During this time, much like we did this last year, we would provide the Chromebooks. The curriculum would be Dublin Unified's curriculum and provided by our teachers. It would all be synchronous. And we would expect that you would, in fact, your students would complete their work virtually. Our intent right now is that the bell schedule will pretty much look like the bell schedule you're already familiar with or remember pre-pandemic, a full day activity. Some of the differences may be that you may have back to school night may be virtual, or parent conferences may be virtual. So there's a variety of different options here in the elementary program. So now we start to look at secondary, and the next couple of slides are going to be somewhat similar. Secondary poses a different sort of opportunity for us. What we're thinking at this point, and I want to go back, this is a working draft, is that our secondary students can stay connected with the school they are currently enrolled or intended to be enrolled with. Again, we're looking at the concept of at least a one-year commitment. This is still under discussion. We'll continue with the curriculum being the district curriculum, and that would include core classes. Now, electives become a little tricky here, and so they may vary amongst our students and what's available in the virtual academy. It does allow for some concurrent enrollment so that students can take courses that may not be offered at their particular school, or virtually, I should say. And again, like at the elementary level, bell schedules will look similar. This does enable students to participate in some of the extracurricular activities at their school. The big difference here is they would remain a part of their current school. Their learning would be online, it would be synchronous for students. What we're wrestling right now, it's pretty much that some teachers may teach first period in a face-to-face class, second period may be a virtual class for them. And again, these are some of the details that we're working out. And the difference being, and this is true for the high school program as well, is that because students have multiple classes and go to multiple places, we would not be able to offer as vigorous as a program if we had you disenroll and move to another school place. There's also the possibility, and it's a possibility, working draft, I'm going to keep emphasizing that your student, if your student's a student at Wells, what could happen would be that maybe they take their English class at Wells, but there's a more appropriate social studies class, or it fits better, that's offered at Fallon virtually, and they may take it there. That's a possibility. I don't want to eliminate it. It's still not finalized. As has been true with the other programs, still Dublin teachers, still Dublin curriculum. This, obviously, we're going to focus on core classes. Our electives, again, that's the piece we're really working out. Bell schedules at the high school level will pretty much match what the bell schedule is at Dublin High School right now. We'll not be able to enroll in another academy. We're limited with all of that. And if a student wants, they could, in fact, take community classes. As a matter of fact, world languages probably would be an area where you might want to take a community college class rather than virtual. Like in the middle school, your student would be able to participate in the extracurricular activities and athletics at the high school level. Now, special education offers yet another opportunity, and a lot of pieces that would need to be worked out. If, in fact, you chose the virtual academy for your student, IEPs would need to be worked up and followed so that the students can be successful and get the services they need in the virtual academy. You see some things repeated over and over about the curriculum. It's our district curriculum, our district teachers, synchronous learning, bell schedules mirroring what's there. Again, in the 6-12 arena, able to participate in extracurricular and athletics at their current school. In DK through 5, you would have things like back to school night and parent conferences, etc., would occur in a virtual environment. So, what are some of the big differences from what we've been doing this year in terms of the distance learning format? And one of the pieces that we really need to do, and we know legislation is directing us, well, there's probably two pieces here, is that we really cannot and should not be offering the distance learning as we have it now once the new school year opens. And again, this is part of that roller coaster ride. Actually, I kind of equated if you've ever been to Disneyland and ridden the Indiana Adventure ride. That's a roller coaster, but it has stops that jerks you left and right, what have you. That's kind of how this school year has gone in trying to keep up with all of the different regulations that we keep getting from different sources that we need to follow. And so now we're going to smooth that right out a bit. And in the virtual academy, it will be full-time virtual, and it'll be 5 days a week. And it'll all be synchronous. The instructional minutes will match what you knew before the pandemic, a year ago last March. We do realize we cannot have, and I love this phrase, no roomers and Zoomers. Teachers will teach only virtual learning students during those class sessions, and that's the direction we're going. Can't have both for our students, some who come to school and some who are on a Zoom. We are asking, and we're thinking right now, this needs to be a one-year commitment. We're really wrestling with that in another slide or two. I'll talk about that a little bit more. This is so much still in the working concept that some of these things may change. So what about if you sign up to be a part of the virtual academy and then decide you want to go the in-person instruction? We really want you to know that this program is really being constructed based on family interest and staffing for the 21-22 school year. Now, what we are confident is, and we pretty much know, is that moving from one program to the next, to the next, to the next, can become disruptive to the learning process. For not only for your student, but it impacts the class they may or may not join. So we, on a more global perspective, need to keep that whole piece in our thinking. So we are exploring options on how to make the learning process continuous and accommodate if there's a change in what the student needs. So if you choose to go to the virtual and you realize your student's not achieving at the level you want or being able to perform at the level they should be, we're exploring how do we make that right for students. And this is one of those places where we do not have any definitive on this particular piece, but it is in our conversation, it is in our thinking, and I think that's important for you to know. So some of you may be saying, so how does this differ from independent study? Our virtual learning is a pilot program, and I've already outlined some of the pieces you see on the left, meeting with the teacher, working as a part of the class, and it's a 5-day per week schedule. Independent study and or homeschool is a very different program, is regulated by Ed Code, and we as a school district have certain restrictions. We would not be able to take, if the interest survey that we've gotten just on this particular presentation is any indication, we would exceed what the law allows us to do in independent study. Independent study, typically the student meets with the teacher once a week on an ongoing basis. There is no real classroom, and it's typically a one-on-one situation. The student works independently. They're not necessarily online unless the teacher's given some assignments that direct them somewhere online. And the schedule is very flexible. You work out a schedule with your teacher in independent study. But again, we as a school district are limited in how many students we can have in independent study at any one time, which is why we are looking at the Virtual Learning Academy. What we wanted to do is just kind of give you an overview of what are some of the other districts around us doing, because they are looking at similar sort of concepts. And you'll see some of the comparisons between Dublin, Livermore, and San Ramon. Those are often the districts that we're associated with or connected with, or people look at it and compare us to. And you do see some differences amongst there. You know, it's interesting as I look at this chart and I go down, I see K-5 enrolled in current school, and all across the board, everybody's saying no. But you see a lot of yeses in there as well. For us, in terms of honors and AP courses, that's going to depend on interest. If we have enough students to fill a section online of an AP or an honors course, we'll explore offering that. Other districts are saying no. We are doing the interdistrict transfer request, and you see how different schools, districts are doing that. San Ramon is, everybody's got to do an interdistrict transfer. Livermore and Dublin, we're saying no, we think we can manage it within our current environments. So this chart's really just to help you understand what else is going on around us and how they're putting it together. So I wanted to also point out two other districts here who are significantly different. Pleasanton is exploring this option, and they've got a very different model they're looking at. Trust me, we've talked with both Pleasanton and Castro Valley about their models and trying to see what we can borrow, what are some of the best elements of theirs that we could possibly use, and what doesn't work for us as we understand our community. And so you see the difference between Pleasanton. They are offering a virtual academy, but you'll notice how K-8, they have weekly meetings with the teacher, 9-12 weekly meetings with the subject area teachers. And they have a blended learning with both online courses through Edgenuity, as well as face-to-face. Castro Valley, they've been doing this for a while now, and they have the virtual academy for 9th grade through 12th. And they have some blended learning with the classes using Edgenuity as well. And some of you may be familiar with our online classes that we've used in some of our homeschooling or our independent study programs. So with all that, that opens us up to Q&As. And I believe Sarah Lopez from our communications department is going to feed me questions. And this is where staff, in terms of our assistant superintendent for educational services, our director of secondary education, Sherry Sweeney, and our director of elementary education, Curtis Haar. And I don't know if I said your name, Matt, as our assistant superintendent, will help me with answers. Once again, and Heather Duncan's, are you there, Heather? She is our assistant superintendent of human resources in case there's something related to HR. And as I stay here long enough, and more and more people will just pop up on the screen. And we have Chip there, who is a part of our communications department. And you saw Sarah Lopez, she was the first one up here. So with that, Sarah, why don't you start asking us questions? And Sarah and Chip, I think you're going to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to go back and forth, and we have received questions in the Q&A portion. So if you have a question, please ask it in the Q&A box. Our first question is there a hybrid option for any of the grades?
We are not exploring a hybrid option at this time. We are committed, and we truly believe, and one of our guiding principles is our students learn best when they've got a consistent format over and over. And we do believe in the face-to-face model, but we also understand that for family reasons or personal reasons, some people may choose the virtual academy. And so we want to make that option available to you.
Danielle, our next question comes up a number of times, and basically is along the lines of the fact that vaccines are becoming available. And will there be an option to consider starting the year remotely and then transitioning to campus later in the year?
And that's, I kind of alluded to it in one of the earlier slides, and that's a piece we're really wrestling with right now. As I mentioned, I think in the slide, the consistency and the disruption to the learning process is what we want to minimize. We're not saying no right now, but we don't know that we have landed on anything that is best for the students, best for teachers and the classes that they set. Now, one of the pieces I will say, if we do even open that option, there is no guarantee that there will be space in your neighborhood school at that time. You know, there is, you know, it may happen that if you want to do third grade at Green Elementary, third grade is completely impacted there, meaning every class is full, we may need to say, okay, if you want to come back face-to-face for the remainder of this year, you need to be at Doherty. But we're still exploring that option. We don't have a definitive answer.
Our next question is, why would we need to do another new enrollment for K through 5? What's the harm in continuing like what we're doing now?
Part of it is all around staffing and the fact that the virtual academy will be a school, and by ed code again, it's going to have its own school number and all that sort of thing. So students will need to be enrolled in a program. And so that would be the program your student would be enrolled in.
Our next question is, how much time do we have to decide if we need virtual studying or not? So I think this is just a question of what is the timeline for making a decision regarding virtual academy?
We're hoping to get approval on whatever we end up structuring, either by the last meeting in May or the first meeting in June. We will, in all likelihood, before then, send out a different sort of interest form, research form as to, yes, I'm ready to go to the virtual academy sort of piece. We haven't worked out any details on that, so wait till we have more on that, because we need to know how many students are impacted. So we're hoping that by mid-month next month, we have a handle on this and what we will be offering. I hope that answered that question. Chip, do you think I got it?
Yeah, thank you.
The next question is, do we lose our spot in our current school, and can we come back to regular in-person school after the one-year commitment?
Simple answer to that is that right now our thinking is yes, particularly after the one-year commitment. All of that's going to really be dependent on where enrollment is. If by some fluke, and let me stay with the third grade at Green, nobody leaves Green for fourth grade and they're still impacted, well, that becomes a different sort of issue. But we do have movement during the summer, and so it would be rare. So our intent would be to try to get you back into your neighborhood school.
Next question I have is there an option to choose certain classes for virtual learning and others in person at the school site?
I feel like I'm doing all the talking, so I'm going to turn that over to one of the staff members here. I don't know if one of you feel comfortable answering that one. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mayo. The short answer is no. We want students that are going to commit to the virtual learning academy to commit, and so that means that all classes will be done virtually.
Our next question is, for students who are back in person high school, will they need to log into their computers in class? The bandwidth right now is very low.
Well, we would hope Sherry, do you want to answer that one again? I don't need to talk about everything.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think what the question is addressing is the fact that right now we have students both sitting in person and working from home simultaneously, and the bandwidth has been a little challenging occasionally. So the answer is no, they wouldn't need to be. The students who are sitting in the classroom will be receiving regular live instruction. And there would not be simultaneous instruction with the virtual academy students.
And I think the last part of that with the virtual academy students, because one of the things we hope we all learn this year is how to use the technology to enhance the instruction. So there's maybe some log-in time, but it won't be for the distant learning format.
Correct. And what I think it's addressing is there has been some drain on the system occasionally because so many students are logged in simultaneously on campus right now. But it will go back to a model where teachers are using technology intermittently throughout their lessons, and we would expect the bandwidth would be fine for that.
Our next question is, do these changes represent a new cost increase or saving to the district, and by how much?
I'm going to answer that one. No, it really should not either a savings or a cost increase. It should really find itself out. We get what they call an ADA, average daily attendance. For each student, we get a certain amount of dollars from the state. And actually what we're anticipating, we'll have more students next year, so we are going to get some additional dollars, but that's because our enrollment is continuing to grow. But this really doesn't have a negative impact as we see it right now on our budget. Negative or positive, actually.
We've gotten a few questions of this nature. How do we decide about signing up for this option, and when will the deadline be?
We haven't set the deadline. And again, I don't know if any of the three of you want to respond to that. We have not set a deadline, but we do know that well before the end of June, we need to have a real handle on who's going where. Because this also impacts our staffing, and teachers want to know, am I teaching here or am I teaching there?
Next question is for the virtual academy. The classes will be live streamed, ? Or is it live with a teacher? Is the same curriculum as on-site?
Curtis, I think you would love to answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Morrow. Yes, the curriculum would be the same curriculum that we're using for all of our Dublin Unified School District classes, and it would be like you're live streaming into that classroom with the virtual teacher.
Our next question is, what precautions are being taken if we choose to send our students to school full-time in person? Also, will vaccines be required if and when they are available?
Will vaccines, I want to make sure, because there's two questions in there. Number one, we are fully aware that there's still going to be some regulations we have to follow. We're certain we'll still be wearing masks in the fall, and we know that. We've got regulations, and Curtis may be able to speak to this better than me, because he's been digging deep all year on this one. But the 3 feet distance for students and 6 feet distance for adults, and then when we go to lunch, we're back to the 6 feet. Those sort of regulations will stay in place. Curtis, you want to add anything to that?
Well, that's what the current reality is per the Alameda County guidelines right now. Over the course of the next 3 months, as we progress through tiers, the restrictions may be lifted at that point in time. So we will follow whatever the current guidance is as provided to us by the county.
And I think then on the vaccination part, it's interesting, just at last night's board meeting, that question was posed to us. And that's, as the question was posed, what immediately came to my mind is, okay, if we require vaccinations, we have the HIPAA requirements, is how much information can we get back and forth? So there's not an easy yes, no answer at this point in time. I do know there's a lot of conversation in Sacramento about vaccinations, who's vaccinated, who needs to be. And again, Curtis, I don't know if you've got something more to add on that.
Right, our next question is, will K-5 students enrolled in a virtual learning academy be able to transfer back into their home school should they wish to return in person for the 2022-23 school year, or will they go to the back of the line in returning to their homeschool site?
Curtis, do you want to address that? I'm saying no to back of the line, but Curtis, you want to go ahead?
Those are some of the details right now that we are working out in regards to what it would look like for students who are in the virtual academy and what it would look like in future years if they were returned back to their site. So those are some of the details that we're still working through.
And that impacts staffing again on a year-to-year basis. Do I teach here or am I teaching there, sort of thing?
The next question is, for the high school virtual option, it sounds like students will not have a full range of class options. For example, certain AP or honors courses may not be available. Is that correct?
Sherry, I'm going to let you do that one.
Sure, I'd be happy to take that one. That is correct, that we expect that all of the traditional core classes that are typical for everybody to take, English 1, English 2, English 3, those kinds of biology, those kinds of classes would be available in the virtual format. But the classes that have a lower enrollment, the specialty classes, we would have to see what the interest was before we could commit to offering a virtual section of those elective classes.
Right, our next question is, how will the pickup drop-off of study materials be organized? I assume this is for K-5. Will it be at the neighborhood school or a central location for those enrolled in virtual options?
That's an interesting question, and that's not one we've explored yet. I don't know if anybody, Matt, Curtis, or Sherry, want to try to take a stab at that. But
Yeah, I would say, Dr. Moreo, that's one of the details that will need to be fleshed out, and it is an excellent question. And when we return to make sure that we have answers to these questions, that's a detail that we can really flesh out and communicate to our families where that drop off and pick up and the locations of that.
Will my child's teacher be teaching from school? Where exactly are they going to be located?
Right now, what we're talking about is all virtual at the elementary level. All virtual teachers will be in one location, and it will be one of the school district facilities.
What would the maximum class size be for the virtual option?
I could do that real quick, and that is we stay within the contractual regulations that we have with our Teachers Association. And again, staff, if you've got something to add that you don't think I said completely, please feel free. You went silent on us, Sarah.
That was me. I was on silent. We have a question about testing. Is SBAC testing still going to take place for those in the virtual academy?
I'm going to let one of the Ed Services people answer that one.
I would say yes, we would be depending on what the state guidelines are for next year. But if a student is in the virtual academy, then we would, again, these are some finer details that would have to be figured out, but we would have to come up with some sort of program to make sure that the students are assessed through with the SBAC. So that is just something, the manner in which we do that, has to be fleshed out. But however, every student will be given an SBAC test next year.
Our next question is, are there any classes that students will not be able to take if they're in the virtual option, for instance, labs or baking?
Sherry, do you want to give that one a stab, or Matt?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, but Chip, I didn't hear that very last part. For example, which class?
Labs or baking.
Oh, again, we won't know that until we see what the interest level is. We are offering all of our courses, as you know, this year through a distance, or did offer through a distance learning format. And so we would need to look again at next year what that might look like in a virtual academy for some of those specialized classes that are more hands-on.
Our next question is there a possibility that maybe schools will not be open for full-time instruction in person in the fall, considering the changing circumstances?
Well, that's a possibility. The good news is that if you see, we've got counties that are moving into the yellow phase of all of this, and that's good news in that maybe we're learning to manage this pandemic much better than when it first hit us. Chances of it reversing are slim. A lot of that is real dependent on the travels of our families this summer, and where people go and when they come back. Right now, all indications are, and you've heard from the governor, June 15th, California is open. But what does that mean for us at the school sites? We're really anticipating we're going to be open.
Our next question is, how will this look for SDC students? Will they continue to get all the services?
And do one of the staff here want to do that one?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We would still continue to provide the services that our special education students that are on the student's IEP. So those services would continue to be delivered to support our students.
Our next question is, will there continue to be an active monitoring of COVID cases for anyone, staffers, teachers, students' family at school for 21-22? And what are those policies?
And I'm probably going to tap into you a little bit here, Curtis, but I was in a meeting about a week ago now with the county health department, and he said COVID is here to stay. If you're vaccinated, your likelihood of the severe illness is less. Not impossible, but less. And I think the simple answer is yes, we will continue to monitor COVID cases. Curtis, you want to add on to that?
Not much to add other than we just follow the direction and guidance of the county health department in regards to the monitoring and the reporting out of any COVID cases. And as conditions change and as the guidance changes from the health department, we would adjust with them.
Thank you.
Our next question asks us to talk about the connection between virtual academy students and joining sports and after-school programs and how that will work. And I'm just going to connect it to an additional question, which talks about having a virtual student who is not vaccinated. Would they be allowed to participate in in-person extracurricular activities?
And I'm going to answer part of that question. Sherry, you may want to chime in here. The vaccine being vaccinated goes back to an earlier comment. That's the piece we've really got to wrestle out in terms of what information can we have and wrestle with. Are we only going to let vaccinated students participate, or are we going to allow the mix and this and that? And that's a big topic for discussion. Sherry, do you want to take the first part of the question?
Sure. I think, again, the expectation right now is that students who are in the virtual academy in grades 6 through 12 would be affiliated with their current school and would be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities, barring any restrictions that would come from the county health department.
Our next question is, are there any thoughts on having an inter-district virtual academy combining Dublin, San Ramon, Livermore, and or Pleasanton?
No, we haven't had that conversation at all. And it's kind of interesting because, as you saw in the earlier slides, a couple of districts are looking at this very differently than how we're looking at it. Some districts are kind of similar to how we're looking at it. And we have not even considered a Tri-Valley, so to speak, virtual academy at this moment in time. Not out of the realm of possibility, but we have not had that conversation.
Our next question is, my child will be a 5th grader next year. Can he or she participate in a graduation in person? I assume this is in relation to having a virtual student. Will they be able to be part of a live graduation or promotion event?
And that's one of the policies and pieces that we're going to need to go back and wrestle with, in terms of, okay, you're in this, well, actually, if you're in, particularly at the elementary level, you're in a different school. And so they would have their different sort of celebration for promoting, in this case, from 5th grade to 6th grade. So because you'd be in the virtual academy school, that's where you would participate, not necessarily back and forth between schools.
Our next question is related to in-person instruction, and they're asking, would there still be a daily health screener required for students and staff, as well as regular testing for staff when we open back in person in the fall?
Curtis, I see you reaching there. He was going to call on you.
I'll be reaching for the mouse there. At this point in time, we are anticipating that we will still need to participate in daily health screeners until the pandemic is over. So we're planning for and anticipating the daily health screeners. What was the other part of that question, Sarah?
And testing for staff.
Testing for staff, I don't have a direct answer to that at this point in time, but again, we'll follow the guidance of the county in regards to what the requirements are.
Our next question is, since it will be a while until all elementary age children will get vaccinated, do you have any suggestions about how we decide between virtual and in-person learning?
Chip, I need the first part of that. I didn't pick up right away.
Sure. The question is, since it's going to be a while before vaccinations are available for younger students, do we have any recommendations on how to make a decision regarding virtual or in-person learning?
That's going to come down to you personally in terms of your level of confidence and safety for your child in the school environment. That's one that I don't know that we as a staff, we each can have our own personal opinions, and from our own personal lives, we may be doing one thing, but it may very well differ from what you believe. And so you need to assess for yourself, how safe do you feel you and your child are in a attending full school, full time.
Our next question is, if we decide to choose the in-person learning option, can we change to virtual learning at any time?
That goes back to something I said earlier. It's the consistency of learning that becomes critical. And, we're looking at what are the options. We said we want you to sign up for a full year. Other people have suggested some other things. We haven't landed on a definitive decision on that. One of our guiding principles is what is best for students in terms of continuous learning. So while that's not a direct answer, it is, our answer is we believe that you need to stay with the program for a certain amount of time for the good of learning, the good of learning for your child.
Our next question is, for virtual classes, are the students required to use DUSD Chromebooks, or can they use their own personal laptops?
I think that's open. Ed Services staff, any real strong feelings one way or the other on that one?
No, I think that would be up to a personal choice between the family and the student.
Our next question is there going to be a limit on the number of students that can be enrolled in the Virtual Learning Academy at each level, elementary, middle, and high school?
Where the limitations come is as it relates to class size. And that's where our limits, if we end up with 40 students at, for some reason I'm stuck on third grade today, 40 students at third grade, well, that's far too many for one class. Maybe we can make 2 sections depending on what our staffing looks like. Those are the kind of numbers, and these are the same sort of numbers and things that get looked at on a school site as they're creating classes anyway. So it really depends on how many people sign up in any one grade level or course, etc.
This is along that course, but we've been asked to elaborate on the use of the term dependent on interest in reference to things like honors or AP courses.
Again, I'm not sure. The staff I didn't get part of that question. Sherry, it looks like you.
Yes, I think what I've am ascertaining is that families would like more certainty about which courses specifically in grades 6 through 12 will be available in the virtual academy. And we've said it depends, it's dependent on interest. I think the real question that we will need to work out the detail of is, when will we request that families make that determination, and when can we provide more certainty about which courses we'll be able to offer based on that determination, and whether there will be an option to make a different selection of courses, or a different selection of virtual or in person, once we know what courses are available at the high school level specifically.
Our next question is in regards to in-person learning. Typical classrooms aren't large enough to permit 25 to 35 students to remain socially distanced even at 3 feet. How is this going to be handled if a majority of our children return to campus in person?
Curtis, you want to tackle that one? Or Matt, you look like you got it. Okay.
I can, Curtis, you can go ahead and add whatever you feel like you need to add, but we've done some early testing on reducing the school desks, or the student desks, from 6 feet to 3 feet. And in particular at the high school, we feel like at 3 feet distance, then we are going to be able to accommodate most of the classes. We may run into some challenges with some of the larger classes, but for the most part, the vast majority of the classes that are offered at Dublin High, we feel confident that we're going to be able to fit all the students in at 3 feet distance.
Our next question is, if we have a student that wants to come back to in-person school, Will they be able to attend their original school? How will that be done?
Goes back to it's an it depends answer in the terms of space availability at the time the student wants to return. And it's not just at the time the student wants to return. Again, we're looking at are there critical times this makes more sense. You know, at the elementary level, you know, we might be looking at the end of, you know, a trimester or what have you. At the secondary level, going in and out for fluidity of a course, it doesn't make sense in and out all through a semester. So it may be, and that's the operative word, it may be at the semester, or we may need to say, no, we got to stick with the year piece. That we're still wrestling with that.
Our next question is, are you going to send out another survey on whether parents want to be in person or virtual?
It's probably going to, simple answer, yes, we're going to need to find out how many people are really wanting to get into this program. I don't know that it'll just be a survey. It's going to be more of a research, or probably even beyond research. You know, tell us that you want to come over or not at this point in time. Actually, I'm going to backtrack on that a little bit. What we're really going to do is open up enrollment for the virtual academy. And depending on, and it'll be well publicized and this and that, so you'll know about that. And based on the number of people who apply for the interdistrict transfer, we'll be able to know what we can and cannot offer in the virtual setting.
Our next question is there a backup plan in case another surge happens? What's our plan B?
Oh, please, no. That's the Indiana Jones ride there. Here we go, another twist, another turn. And we certainly hope not. But if in fact we have to, we will probably see some form of either distance learning or hybrid, what have you, if it gets that severe. But we're certainly hoping we've crossed the line on that one.
Our next question is, my child gets speech therapy and is in elementary school and won't be vaccinated yet. I don't want him to take his mask off. Will this service still be virtual for next year?
If you've had it this year, I'm going to say, and again, Ed Services Department, correct me if I'm wrong, if we've been able to provide it this year, I would only imagine we'd be offering it again next year. And that might be an example of I'm sorry, Matt, I saw you jump in, but that might be an example of a teacher who has certain hours of the day where they're face-to-face with the student, and then another certain number of hours where they're working with the student virtually. Matt, I'm sorry, I cut you. I hope I didn't cut you off.
No, I don't really have anything else to add, Dr. Morrell.
Our next question is the curriculum same for virtual academy students as for students who are going to school in person?
Yes.
Our next question is, are there going to be specific conditions that a student needs to meet in order to qualify for the virtual academy, or is anyone allowed to enroll?
We have not, and again, staff, help me out. We haven't really talked about any criteria for entering that program. You know, so it's going to be an open enrollment sort of scenario.
Our next question is, in-person school teachers are only teaching in-person classes and vice versa. Is that correct? So I guess we just want to confirm that you're either an in-person teacher or you're a virtual teacher, or is there some option of it?
That would be true at the elementary level more so. The secondary level, a single teacher, if I'm teaching a course at the high school, some of my periods of the day may be face-to-face. I may have a couple of periods that are virtual. So I could do a combination of both.
Our next question is, for in-person learning, will there be a traditional recess, and will parents and families be allowed on campus during drop-off and pickup?
Curtis, why don't you go ahead and take that?
The first part of that question regarding an in-person recess is yes. The second part in regards to allowing visitors on campus, we will have to assess the conditions at the time of opening, as well as throughout the year, to determine how many people we can have on our campus and do so safely.
The next question is, will virtual academy be the same as distance learning, meaning all learning will be through teachers on Zoom sessions?
The teachers on what sessions?
Zoom sessions? So will virtual academy basically be the same as distance learning, which is to say that all of the learning will take place through Zoom sessions with teachers?
A great deal of similarity, but remember, it is a full day program, unlike what we currently are in if you're still on distance learning.
The next question is, can I get an estimate of how many students are already enrolled in the virtual academy to help me decide?
We don't have those numbers yet.
We should clarify that why we don't have those numbers yet.
Oh, because right now we're just we're gathering the interest and we're building the house, and that's why, you know, when we're ready to start having people enroll, then we'll be able to start having numbers.
Our next question is, if a high school student chooses virtual, or I guess a secondary student chooses virtual, how do they get credit for PE?
How do they get credit for
PE, physical education.
Sherry?
Yes, so we are offering virtual PE classes and did last year as well for in distance learning. So it is possible to earn PE credit in a virtual environment.
Our next question is regarding the teaching staff. Is the Virtual Learning Academy going to be taught by Dublin Unified School District teachers, or is it a completely different teaching staff?
The intent is it will be our staff.
All right, our next question is there a specific name for the Virtual Academy?
You got a good idea for what? We're looking. So right now, we're keep calling it Virtual Academy.
We're just doing a quick time check. We have 8 minutes left for questions. We just want to let our attendees know that we have well over 70 questions that we have in the chat box that people are asking. And so we may not be able to get to all of them, but we're definitely going to take note. That way we can look for those answers. We don't have all the answers yet, but we will be getting back to you. So the next questions we have is, if we select the virtual option and our electives, like the AP courses, are then not available, and we find out afterwards, can we then go back and select the in-person option to be able to take those courses?
I'm going to give partial answer, but I'm going to ask maybe Matt, you can step in on this part. The partial answer again is bouncing back and forth is not something we think is in the best interest of learning. But I believe there are some other, I know there are some other options if a student can't get into an AP class on campus. And Matt and or Sherry, one of you want to take that?
Yeah, I would just also suggest, Dr. Mayo, that that's a finer detail that we just don't have worked out yet. And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to have to flesh out as we continue to plan the academy.
Okay, our next question is, if a high school student needs to be quarantined but is not sick and the student is enrolled in in-person learning, can the student join the virtual academy so they do not fall behind?
Oh, again, that's one that we hadn't explored. It's a possibility. It goes back to, when they are well again, do we let them go back to the face-to-face? How many times do we let students bounce in and out and have a smooth flow in the learning process?
Our next question is, will Gale period tutoring be available to the Virtual Learning Academy students?
Sherry, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say Gale period, as you know from Gale period from Dublin High School probably won't exist, but offering some additional tutoring is definitely a piece that we will want to make available. Sherry, do you have something to add on to that?
No, I think you answered it correctly. Again, it's one of those things we have not worked out the details for, but to the extent we have tutoring available for students in a particular grade level in the in-person courses, we would like to be able to offer virtual tutoring for students in the virtual academy.
Our next question is, if a DUSD teacher would be teaching virtually too, then would that mean that there would be less teachers available for in-person learning? like this year, 1 teacher per grade level moved to hybrid? So the question is really, would we have fewer teachers available for our in-person students if some are moving to virtual learning?
Okay, and I think the difficulty in answering that is until we have some solid numbers, we don't know, but what our intent would be to make sure that the programs are staffed appropriately so that students are getting what they need and they feel is best.
We have another question on in-person instruction. Would parents, or being in person, would parents be able to volunteer like pre-COVID days as room parents, art docents, etc.? And would there be a limit set to number of volunteers on campus in a school day?
Curtis, good for you. I saw the reach.
Yeah, again, as I had stated earlier, we will evaluate that as conditions allow to ensure safety of staff, students, and also guests on our campus. So more to come on that as conditions become more clear.
Our next question is, do we disenroll a student from homeschool if we enroll in virtual academy for 6th through 8th?
In essence, yes, that's exactly what happened. You'd enroll in the virtual academy by whatever name we end up calling it, but you would enroll in that program and be disenrolled from your current program. We cannot have students on 2 rosters in 2 different programs in the school district.
For middle school, will the students be able to take advanced math classes? Like if my child is taking Algebra 1, will they be able to take it virtually in the Virtual Learning Academy?
Sherry, I know you love that one.
Yes, so the answer is similar to the question about the high school AP classes. It will depend on the availability of a virtual section for those classes, and or the ability to, as Dr. Moreo said earlier, potentially concurrently enroll in another school that has that course available at a time that the student could take it.
Our next question is, how does opting for virtual academy affect gate testing and instruction?
I see, Curtis, you're reaching again.
Yeah, I mean, this is similar to what Dr. Campbell had mentioned earlier regarding SBAC testing. So any gate testing that's provided, we would also provide through our virtual academy in regards to any gate programming. It would be similar in regards to what our in-person students are receiving.
Looks like we have time for about 2 more questions. So the second to last question is, how long will the Virtual Learning Academy last? Is it only going to be until the pandemic is over?
We're seeing this as a program, a new program that the district will offer. It will last as long as we have students enrolling. So it's not dependent on the pandemic. It's dependent on student and family interest.
Our next question is, will the district be placing travel restrictions on families 2 weeks before school sites open?
Well, we personally can't put the restriction, but we can certainly get word out there about, the traveling and this and that, and trying to encourage folks to limit that. And that does become a real issue as we go further. Now, we here right now in California, as we're moving into the yellow areas, more and more of us, and I'm sure Alameda County won't be that far behind in catching up. There's a certain level of safety and comfort people get to, but we also have a lot of families that start traveling to other countries and even other states that are much more impacted. And that's where the worry comes in. And we really have to encourage and try to limit people's traveling. And if we see that that's not working, then we may have to do, and I hope we don't get to this point, but to say, okay, we've got to be virtual for this many days until we're pretty sure everybody's been quarantined, depending on what part of the world you may travel to.
And that will be the conclusion of our Q&A period. We just want to let our attendees know we still have over 75 open questions. We received, I think, close to 150 questions. So we will be posting a recording of this on the district website on the homepage, as well as the slides.
I want to thank all of you for your great questions. You helped actually provide us with some additional thinking and provided us with some pieces that, oh yeah, we need to think about that and be ready for that. So this has been helpful to us. We are very hopeful that this has been helpful to you in answering some of your questions about this whole concept. As the slides kept saying, this is a draft, no decisions have been made. I want to thank staff, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Haar, Ms. Sweeney, for being here and ready to answer Johnny on the spot, the many questions. And so Chip and Sarah, thank you for facilitating us today. And thank you to all the families. Bye now.